There are 8 things you should never reveal about yourself at work. This is the focus group.
It's the savvy side of 9 to 5. Listen.
Bueller.
Laugh. And learn.
Negotiation. This is what you do in business.
This is the focus group with Tim Bennett.
Staunch.
And John Nash.
Keep your clothes looking neat and clean.
We're all business. Except when we're not.
Hey, welcome to the focus group. Tim Bennett here, as always, with my good friend and co-host, Mr. John T. Nash. We're here live every Wednesday at 1 p.m. East. Thanks to our boys in the booth, Garrett and Steve, for bringing us to you live each week. And we appreciate those of you who tune in. And we know many of you do time shift. And if you want to catch this show or any of our others, go to focusgroupradio.com and click on our logos, and you'll be able to find all of our video and audio broadcasts, including our Tuesday podcast, which is TFG Unbuttoned. Hello, Mr. Nash.
I was just telling the boys in the booth that you have relocated to a new. It looks like it could be like a fun outdoor bar patio in Vegas, for example.
Well, I don't know if Vegas was the look Richard was going for, but it's. But I'm on the porch today because I'm bound and determined to figure out how you've got such great lighting. You've either bought something, you bought one of these ring lights. I accuse you of doing Botox out of Albany. Something's going on, but you have a glow about you, at least on my screen. And of course, I've got a cheap screen. But on my screen, you have a glow about you, which I don't seem to have.
Yeah, cheap screen, which I told you got to buy cheap screen. So here's the secret. In front of me is a window, but you can't see. That window is facing east, and it gets nice light all day, so that's coming in. So you're probably in front of a wall or something, right?
Well, I'm in front of a window usually when I'm in the room. Maybe I'll relocate during the break to the room and you'll see. But I'm in front of a window as well with a light. I took a box and I've got some light over it and all this other nonsense, and I still feel like it's dark.
You look good. But then in the corner, like that, you can't see either. I have remember Tizio lights? I have an old Tizio light that's shooting up to
light?
It's a halogen bulb. It had 2 arms that could pivot. It was like a really big thing in the 80s. Everybody had these things.
Did Bob do this?
No, this is just my desk light, but it shoots up to the ceiling and bounces down. So I'm bathed in soft light. I'm almost like a wedding photographer's dream come true.
Well, this is where all your animation work probably came into play. All your great animation programming that you did, right? So you're able to know how to able to know how to light yourself, light a product.
Composition and lighting.
Yeah. So how are you doing, Mr. Nash? You doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing really good. We had a great weekend. Bob has been painting the inside of the house. So as we've all been off and staying inside, I'm sure that Lowe's is doing a banging business. Actually, come to think of it, or Home Depot. But he's been painting the interior of the house. It looks fantastic. And
wow.
He was going to do this weekend. He was working on the upstairs bedroom and the bathroom. And we have a really, really big master bedroom in the house. And one corner of it is a desk that I have set up in my little office area. And so rather than get in his way, we decided to go down to town, to the city, on Thursday. He had a doctor's appointment anyway. And I stayed in town until Monday night, and he came and picked me up, and we went home. But I got to see neighbors, went on walks, went bike riding, saw how things were doing. And it was really nice to be back and to see our friends down there. So not bad.
You and I have had a different experience because down in Delaware here, it's we see lots of people, lots of activity on the street, lots of people come over and social distance and say hello and stop on their bikes, or a number of the restaurants. Well, all the restaurants and shops are open now, and there's lots of rules about what you can and cannot do, but they're all open. And we'd gone out for dinner last night, a group of us, and it was almost normal, I would say, which was nice.
Did you go down on the main street? There was a couple. Is it Aqua?
Yeah, we went. Yeah, Aqua's across the street. That's opening. It's open now for takeout, but they're opening the big patio. It was bought by the people who bought the Pines, which was across the street where you'd been. So two-story bar restaurant with a balcony. I like that place. Yeah. And so what they've done is they've included. They used to just have dining on the first floor at the Pines. Now they've got dining on the first floor, the second floor, and outside. And so you didn't really notice the fact that there were less tables because there were still activities, still people that just spread further apart. Quite frankly, I didn't dislike that. What I do think was a little odd is none of the regulations, at least here in Delaware, don't allow any bar stools at bars. You can't congregate or stand at a bar right now. So they moved the high tops up against the bar. So you could sit there and talk to the bartender get a drink. But it's another one of these loophole things that just make you laugh. It's like, really, if you can push the table against the bar, why can't I sit in a bar stool? But otherwise,
well, I'm guessing that the table width and the bar width equals some magical social. Hey, I just had a thought, and it was a couple days ago, guys, and this is for Stephen and Garrett as well. Do you think the possible that this happened, that someone said, it would be good if people stayed about 4 feet apart? But then everybody, like all the people that are in charge of this stuff, said, you know what? If you tell people 4, you're going to get 2. We better tell them 6 so we get 4 or 5.
4 or 3. Yeah.
Do you guys think that's a possibility?
Everything that has ever been, any government thing they send out to do is always an overstep and an overreach so that you actually do the right thing. Because you're not going to do the full thing.
They give you one number, and then you shoot for the other number, and you magically. But
it's
that's
like
what they
selling
want.
a car.
Garrett, what do you think?
You got to tell them that you're selling it for like $50,000. Meanwhile, you take 35.
They're not smart enough to do that. There's no way they can figure out that equation to tell what number we have to tell them. So what they actually do, no way.
That's true.
Yeah, the only timeline they seem to adhere to is when taxes are due, right? That's the one timeline they do adhere to, is when taxes are due. There's no leeway there. Although I have sent them in late and estimated sometimes 1 or 2 days. It's not worth the aggravation for them, I guess, to figure it out. But John, you're probably you could be correct.
I may be in the middle, although I am very much in Garrett's camp here, because a friend of mine was asking me about something, and he said, I think they did this, and it was this really complex theory he had about what the government was doing. And I said, let's just assume that they're not that smart, and that what you're seeing is the result of a bunch of well-intentioned people making up stuff, and here's how it landed. And, it's kind of like that's Occam's razor, right? The simplest explanation is probably the right one. And so I think my 6-foot thing may be a little overthinking it. But I got to tell you, it did strike, because when I watch people, the 6 is a certain number. But when I was walking or seeing friends in the city, everybody was mindful of it, but they were probably more like 4. 4 to 5 feet. It wasn't like always a perfect 6.
It was kind of weird how in the parks here, a week after it stopped, they had signs stand this far apart that were 6 feet long with arrows and stuff. It was like they were ready for it, kind of. Like how did they make all these long signs? They weren't like normal signs that you just put anything on it. It was like this weird long sign, 6 feet long and stuff. They're all over every park now.
There
was probably
metal.
arrows. There was probably arrows already made.
Takes a very long time to make a very long sign. Yeah. Everybody knows that.
What do we have in the warehouse? You're right. Everybody knows what 6 is, right? But nobody knows what 4 is. John did a famous ad campaign many years ago where the whole ruler was marked with 8. Remember, John?
8.
That was a brilliant ad campaign
for the gay market, and it said "in an absolute world," and you had to decipher it. But that came out of a conversation where, in an absolute, like when you deal with personals or like some of the hookup apps, everybody's 8. It's a number that is not seen in nature, but everybody's 8. So are you doing good down at the beach?
Yeah.
Better than because you have people. Let's get back to what you were talking about. You can socialize, and I meant to ask you, how nice was it to go out to dinner?
Yeah, and it was this group of friends, Paul and Bruce. I hadn't seen them since the last time we had dinner back in February, and we went to this restaurant. So they had called me and said, "Hey, we're in town," and I didn't even know the restaurants were open. So I met them early. We had a burger and a drink, and it was nice. It was good to see people out. There's certainly lots of rules about what you can do. You just can't walk into the restaurant. You have to have a mask, and then you get escorted to your table, and there's lots of that going on. But it's good to see, particularly in this town where I am down in Rehoboth, people eating outside and people milling around, delivery trucks bringing food in, seafood trucks, boats, all that sort of stuff. So it feels, I don't want to say it's back to normal, but it at least feels like we're moving in the right direction. So that's cool.
What was the mask etiquette at the table? So you sit down, you have to have I understand going into businesses and stuff, we all getting used to that, but you come in, you sit down, but you're with a group of people. The table was not necessarily, or was it 6 feet wide? I mean, could you just take off your...
Yeah, so what the rules are here, apparently, is that, and it's whether, in the restaurant, the owner of the restaurant, Tyler, had a smart way of saying about it. So technically, put that in quotes. So the hostess stand is outside. They don't let anybody in unless everyone has their own mask. So then you walk into the restaurant, you sit at your table. And what some of the government guidelines or whatever is that you're not allowed to go to a restaurant or eat with people unless you're all from the same household.
The same bubble, the same quarantine bubble.
And so he said to us, he said, that's not, because I'm not asking everybody whether they live together or what the living arrangement is. He said, if you want to go out to dinner with friends, as long as you adhere to when you get to the table, you take your masks off because you're going to eat and drink. He said, but if you get up to go see somebody that you know at another table, or you need to use the restroom, or you leave your table, you must put your mask on. He said, but what they have done is they limited it to 6 people at a table. And he said, we won't seat any more than 6. I think the rules are 12, but he said, we're keeping it 6. But you're supposed to be from the same household. But a lot of us that have been down here for 2 or 3 months together that have been social distancing or seeing each other, we might as well have been in the same household, in my opinion. But so that's how we did it.
So the Times had an article that was fascinating about this exact thing, which is as we've progressed and as people are, as things are changing, it's going to bring up all this stuff about friendship and what we assess as our personal hygiene level, adherence to certain things versus what another household is doing. And some people, like the article mentioned that this husband and wife had a son, and they knew their neighbors were quarantining just like they were, and they had a little girl, and that they were going to do a play date. And they knew they were in town, but the couple they asked about for the play date, the father was like, no, we're actually going to be out of town. But that was his way of saying he didn't want to come expand the quarantine bubble. I don't mean to be cavalier about it, but I think that this is something you and I talk about on the phone all the time. It's risk assessment. So if you have a 1 in 1,000 chance of contracting the virus when you leave your home, that's about equal to the possibility of a brick falling from a building. You could actually start looking at this statistically and quantifiably. And so then you got to say to yourself, okay, well, if all these other things, think about when we get in our cars, right? I do think about always being careful and being a good driver. But random happens, right? You're down. I remember my old business partner Greg was driving over in Sullivan County once, and he turns a corner, and boom, a deer jumps out. He had no time to do anything other than sadly hit the deer. Car was damaged. He was okay. But those are statistical anomalies, right? And so
a second before, a second after, he'd have been fine, right?
Exactly. And so I'm not sure the virus plays the same way, but it's still a risk, right?
Yeah, what I find odd about it is if you go to Lowe's, or you can go to Home Depot or the grocery store or to the CVS or pharmacy, you're picking up things, you're moving things, you're touching things. You have a mask on, but you're touching things. Mm-hmm. And everybody else has touched things as well, despite the fact they're saying they're wiping things down. But if you pick a product up off the shelf and put it back, or you move something, you're touching things, and everybody else is touching things. And so hence the sanitizer and to just not touch your face, things like that. Yeah, but you're going to have it on your hands, right? Because you're in the store and you're pushing the cart around, you're moving things around, you're moving items around. So but the people that I've socialized with here, particularly the women across the street, Pat and Joyce, I've seen them probably socially 2 or 3 times a week. They invited me over last night, but I had plans. They invited me over for dinner, but the chairs are apart. You bring your own glass, you hang out, we talk. I saw them on Sunday night with people who listened. I talked about that on Unbuttoned, Patrick and Howard, who listened to the show down here. And we were all probably 6, 8, 10 feet apart, and just had a nice visit in the backyard. Yeah, so. When I went bike riding I went on a ride with Adam, my friend Adam, on Friday, and I was telling the guys in the booth I went up to Lake Rockland on Sunday. It's like a 15-mile round trip. It was just so nice to hang out with another human being. Right. Yeah, we were very careful. I had a neck gaiter, so I could always pull it up over my mouth and nose to be careful around other people and around Adam. But it was just so nice to hang out with somebody. It was like, wow, I really missed that. And my friend Barbara, my neighbor down the hall, we would go for walks every day. And then one day we had a cocktail in the courtyard of our building. And we were it's like what you were describing. We sat at a table, we were 6 feet apart. We were debating whether or not to keep the masks on because, but we would drop them and take a drink and pull them back up. But
The thing about it is you make it work, and that's what I'm most fascinated by. We've all made it work somehow.
Well, if you had come down here, say you came down for the weekend here,
yeah,
I would not have any concern if you and Bob had come down because you'd been quarantined or you've been you've sheltered wherever you were. But and I think that's the assessment you have to make, right? Is that technically we shouldn't be going out or seeing each other because we've been apart, but. Maybe I'm being too cavalier. Maybe I'm being too cavalier about it.
No, you're not. No, like the UPS driver, the FedEx driver, the postal worker, they're all making these decisions every day, and thankfully, at least where we're at, everybody seems okay.
Right.
So yeah, you figure it out.
So what caught your eye this week?
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
All right, what caught my eye is a crossover from Freddie Mercury of Queen and Darth Vader from Star Wars. Now, you would not associate the two of them together.
I saw this and I was shocked when I saw this. So what's this about?
Okay, so Vanity Fair did an article about, rock bands that have co-opted or used pop culture icons in their acts. And between 79 and 80, Queen, whenever they would perform, there was one part of the stage act where Freddie Mercury would come out sitting on top of a guy that was dressed as Darth Vader. No one really knows who the guy is. Someone in the article later on said it was probably a stagehand or a roadie who was strong enough to carry Freddie on his shoulders. Fans loved it. He would come out, and he was wearing a shirt that said Flash on it because he was the Queen did the soundtrack for a movie called Flash Gordon, which was, of course, a movie of the serialized famous old series. I think it was Buster Crabbe. I forget who used to play Flash Gordon back in the day. I mean, we're talking the 30s and 40s. You'd go to the Nickelodeon or something to see that. So everybody loved it. Everybody would go crazy on stage when he came out on Darth Vader's shoulders. Now, George Lucas's reaction was a little bit different. He heard about the stunt, and he basically had his organization draft a letter saying, you can't do this with Darth Vader. And in fact, that shut the whole thing down. It says here, Mercury's stunt was one of the most memorable in the history of Queen and the history of Star Wars. Lucas clearly didn't think so, though. But it was, it connected audiences. People loved it. I just thought it was amusing that it should surface now. Like I don't know who decided to find. Vanity Fair must have decided to do this at some point. They found these pictures, and suddenly, all over the web, I'm seeing pictures of Freddie Mercury riding Darth Vader.
So they didn't find them, but they just asked him not to do it.
Yeah. In fact, the untold story of Queen, the biography says that Lucas threatened Queen with a lawsuit to prevent them from using Darth Vader in their concerts. The threat served its intended purpose, and Queen stopped incorporating the Dark Lord of the Sith into their act. Especially since it was Flash because Flash Gordon came out a few years after Star Wars, clearly trying to ride the coattails of a successful science fiction movie. But I just thought it was amusing.
I wonder in a case like this, and I understand that people want to protect their intellectual property, right? Lucas wants to protect his intellectual property and get royalties and all the other things that go with that. But in the case of somebody like this, you would think that you would just like the fact that it was, Queen is a beloved band. Freddie Mercury, unless they just didn't want to be associated with it. But if it were you, would you have made a big deal about it and said, stop doing it?
No, because, it reminds me of someone going to a Halloween store and renting a costume.
Right.
You could rent a costume of Darth Vader or a stormtrooper. What you do in that costume is then up to you. Actually, Lucas is pretty loose when it comes to, or he was before he sold to Disney, but he allowed a lot of things to go on under the Star Wars rainbow, so to speak.
Really?
Fan-made films, fan-made cartoons, things like that, because he thought it was inspirational and creative. There must be some reason why he didn't want Freddie Mercury doing it, but, I guess we'll never know.
Jeez. I feel bad, John. I feel like I'm not looking at you because the way my monitor is, I'm looking away. But it just feels kind of weird. Do you notice that? I guess I had my monitor set up the wrong way. So, hey, so what caught my eye this week is something that's actually a couple years old, but it started resurfacing an awful lot, and I don't know why. But the headline is Cowboy Boot Sandals are the craziest summer fashion trend. And so my pet peeve about summer in men's toes, right? Clip your toenails,
yeah.
boys. You got to clip your toenails,
keep
boys.
Keep your feet groomed. That's your thing. Keep your feet groomed. Pay attention.
Right. So there was a guy that started this company called Redneck Boot Sandals. And what had happened was, his name is Scotty Franklin. A couple of years ago, he was on vacation at the Gulf Shores of Alabama. I don't need to say more, but he was on the Gulf Shores of Alabama and saw a man walking on the beach in his cowboy boots. So Scotty had his flip-flops on. He said he felt bad for the guy with the boots, so he thought, I wonder if there's a way where I could cut open part of those boots and make them beach ready. So he went back and took an old pair of boots and started modifying them, and came up with a number of these different styles that they call redneck sandals. And there's a website, there's Facebook page. If you're watching on our video feed, you'll see a number of different styles of them. They're formal. There's more like motorcycle boots sort of things. There's boots for kids and teens, men and women. And it's a cost of $150. You can send the boots into them, and they'll modify them for you. You get your choice of straps or whether you want them to be like flip-flops. And then you'll have them for the summer. As you know, John, I lived in Oregon for a while, and I've got a couple of pairs of Western boots or cowboy boots, and I'm thinking of sending them in, or maybe one pair in and getting them done. Do you think I could clip-clop around Manhattan in those?
You once told me that I really hadn't arrived until I get myself a pair of authentic Western boots.
That's what I was told.
To answer your question, yeah, you could do it. Yeah,
that was not a vote of confidence.
It's a vote that says you could do it, but I'm not sure what people are going to react to. And the second thing I thought of to answer that, so I answered your question, but the thing I thought of while you were doing this was, you got to wonder about the employees who are doing the modification to the boots, right? So the boot comes in, and what does someone say? Hey, Mabel, get the shears. Do they get they literally are just cutting the boot up, right?
Yeah, but they put in the little thing to put your big toe and your other toe in between, or you can do
So they have to modify the
strap
heel.
over.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was shocked by it. But all the pictures of the people seem to be very pleased in them. I'm not sure any friends of ours have a pair. Now, I bet though, Garrett, I can bet you the boys in the booth, Garrett and Steve, would either of you wear a pair of these boots, these flip-flop boots?
There are two things I don't really like to wear: boots and like open-toed flip-flops. Yeah.
Oh, really?
I hate flip-flops with a passion. I hate any sort of men's sandal. So I would wear the boot.
Even high-top shoes I don't really like that much. I have a pair, but not my favorite.
What do you wear to a formal occasion, Garrett?
Oh, like shoes.
Dress shoes.
Dress shoes, yeah.
You don't wear your cowboy boots?
No.
Well, I do.
When I was 7, we went across country, and my dad bought me cowboy boots, and before I even got to put them on, that night our car was broken into, and someone stole my cowboy boots, and I never got to wear them. So maybe that's why.
So you never got another pair. That was it.
Childhood trauma turns into I will not wear the boots. Now I have a quick open-toed. I think Garrett is totally right on this open-toed sandal thing. So you remember my friend Steve from college, Pat? Okay. So he had a friend named Tim who used to live here in the city, and this story goes back to before they were running on all the lines air-conditioned cars. Now you can imagine a New York subway car in July or August without air conditioning. So this guy, Tim, was telling us a story one time where he was on this train, he's on a car, and he's sitting at one end of it, and the other end of it, there was something on the floor, and then there was a homeless person on a bench kind of sleeping. He suspected that what the thing on the floor was like a turd or something. But it didn't smell or anything. But someone opens the door, and they come through with a pair of open-toed sandals, and they accidentally hit that mound, and suddenly it was like, whoa, it is a turd. So there is your no open-toed sandals. You never know, right?
Yeah, especially walking around the city. You get a grime around the bottom of your foot, no matter what you're doing.
Yeah.
When I was when I was a tour guide in college, I had a family. And the mother was a little bit fussy, I guess, for lack of a better word. She had open-toed shoes on, and she wanted to see where fraternity and sorority row was, and it was a Saturday morning, so there were parties the night before. So similar thing, John. We went by between one of the frat houses and the science building, and there was somebody had gotten sick the night before. And so, of course, she slipped in it, got all in her toes. And she was screaming at me like a lunatic, and I didn't know what to do. So I took her over to the maintenance facilities building, and they had a hose, and they hosed her down. Her pants were all wet and everything. I don't think her son ever ended up going to Marietta, but it was one of those things where don't wear open toes. Don't wear them on airplanes either. They tell you don't wear them on airplanes.
People do it all the time, but I see people. Well, back when we were all traveling more, it's scritch, scritch, scritch. You could always tell that's up, and then they make that noise when they hit your heel, the flip flop. Yeah, the flip flop noise.
Well, they say not to wear them on airplanes all the time, but and even when I've come to New York to see you, sometimes I like wearing them, but I'll sometimes I won't do it because I'm thinking you can't run in them, you can't get away in them. Somebody will step on your foot. They're really for the beach.
Wait. The first two were the best. You can't run. You can't get away. You're worried about like being chased or attacked, right?
Can you run in flip flops? No, you got to
have
a shoe
very
to
hard,
run.
and you hurt yourself doing it because your toes are curling slightly to try to keep them on. You know what I mean? And it's just not good for you. Yeah.
I always say that about New York. You remember Holly Raymer and Regini and Rob Moran. Whenever we would go into Manhattan, Holly would always say, "What are we wearing?" And they would say, "We're going to New York. We're wearing black. Going to New York. Wearing black." That's all you need to do. It settles everything.
Thank you. Look what I'm wearing. Yeah. But it's navy blue. It's showing up as black on the screen.
Going black. Wearing black.
Yeah.
So our business birthday this week.
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings, but the Focus Group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
So, John, before I do our official business birthday, I was reprimanded by a friend of ours today whose birthday is and wanted to know if he was going to be the business birthday. Matthew Hellier. So it's Matt's birthday.
Matt is
today.
a Renaissance man, is he not?
I know. And he said he goes, why? He goes, you could highlight all of my pet portraits that I do and all the repair work I do and the impressionist art and all the other things that he's involved in. So I promised him that maybe on one show it'll be a caught my eye. I'll show some of his artwork. And so
Can we do that? I would love to do that, and I'll tell you why. And because I'll show you, you gave me and Bob a gift one year that we still adore to this day, and it was painted by Matt. Do you know what it was?
Right. Yep, the house. Your country house.
Picture of our country house, and it will forever be a really great image because some trees that were in that are no longer alive because of an ice storm or something. But I love that. I look at it, and he just finished work for one of our clients. Beautiful job. He's a talented guy.
Yeah. No. Yes, he did that work. And
so
then
happy birthday, Matt. Happy
birthday, Matt. And he did some pet portraits recently for some people who have lost their dogs, and they're gorgeous. So anyway, we'll do that on another time. But it is his birthday today, so happy birthday, Matt. I know he listens. Our official birthday, not that Matt's not official, but born today, June 3rd, 1931, Norman Eugene Brinker. And he died June 9th, just a few days after his 78th birthday. In 2009. I did not know him, but certainly know everything that this guy's been involved with. He's an American restaurateur. He was responsible for the creation of a lot of the new business concepts within the restaurant field, so things that are very familiar with us, particularly what they call fast casual. He was president of Jack in the Box, which I've never eaten at. Have you eaten at Jack in the Box?
No.
I've never eaten one of those.
Basically, it's like a hamburger chain, right?
Yeah, hamburger chain. But he also founded Steak and Ale. And I don't know if you remember, I think there was one in Waterbury, but what the Steak and Ale was famous for, what he was famous for doing there was he's often credited with starting or popularizing the salad bar. The concept of people getting up out of their table and going and making their own salad and feeling. I remember the first time doing it, I thought, I'm getting away with something, right? You went up to the salad bar, you get whatever you want. And that was the concept that he had helped establish. He also helped solidify what they call the fern bars. So bars like Bennigan's or Houlihan's, those bars that they were nicknamed fern bars for singles. They were a little more upscale, I guess.
Hooligans would not have been upscale.
I know Hooligans wasn't. I would say Hooligans and Bennigan's. Houlihan's.
Yeah.
So he was in the military after he was at Jack in the Box, and then he worked with founding the Steak and Ale. He sold that to Pillsbury, which I didn't realize Pillsbury was in the restaurant business, but he sold it to Pillsbury and got a job internally there. And that's how he helped develop Bennigan's, which Pillsbury had. Pillsbury also ran Burger King and Haagen-Dazs. And so he was in charge of all the restaurant operations for these companies. And in 1984, they decided to purchase a small burger chain called Chili's. And it was just one location in Dallas. And he ended up taking that over and growing it into huge success. They said it was probably his biggest success was the Chili's, and then him taking that over. Currently, Brinker International employs over 100,000 people with over $4 billion in sales nationally. He was also a member of the 1952 Olympic team in equestrian, and also participated in the modern pentathlon in the Olympics as well. He was married 4 times. And this was a surprise to me. His third wife's name was Nancy Goodman. And he had, with her, in honor of her sister, started a cancer charity. He gave a lot of his money to different charities and foundations. And so he and his wife produced what is probably one of the most famous charities of the 20th century, the Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer Foundation. And so he started that with a lot of his money and philanthropy. And then they said he also, in terms of the way he started servicing or would have his servers talk to people in restaurants, the concept of when a server comes up to you and says, "Hello, my name is John. I'm going to work with you today." That was something that was very new. And also the concept of starting the what they call the Burger Wars. And he was the first person to put Burger King up against McDonald's. Although they were sued by McDonald's, it really was the beginning of that sort of thing. And so he's a pretty interesting guy. He's had influence in Applebee's, Fridays, a bunch of other chains that we know. Boston Market, Sizzler. I think you used to go to Sizzler.
Sizzler. Yeah, I like this guy a lot. And what I'm fascinated by is his expertise at creating these. Were these ended up being a franchise? So if Chili's a franchise?
It was the concept of a chain restaurant. So these big corporations that would have chains. So they weren't franchises, but they were chains. And they said before this, in 76 or the 70s, there weren't a lot of chains, at least national chains, right? There were maybe a handful. And he was very much a part of that.
All right, so it is corporate owned. So I wonder what he did in the military. Did they tell you that at all when he was in the service? Because this expertise of his to go in and to create an environment, a dining environment, right? And if it's a chain, then there's all kind of things that happen when you're sourcing product for the entire chain. There's a economy of scale, right? So if you're buying French fries or something, you're distributing, you're getting better pricing. I wonder if he was like a supply guy or something. What was it? You don't have an idea?
I did, and of course I deleted it. Because his bio was quite long, and it did say out of the military he went to college in San Diego. So I assumed what you did, that he was in some sort of operations or some logistics sort of program, which would make a lot of sense, right?
Well, because he had a gift for clearly scaling these restaurants, but also a really great handle on how to manage your staff and how to, respectfully manage and work with your customers, right? Which is really key to get them coming back for repeat business.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's, I've been to all the different, and I remember going to Bennigan's for the first time thinking it was really something. And, I think we all did that sort of thing because I guess you don't think about you don't think about those things at the time. Funny, Sarah Michelle Gellar, she was also sued as part of the Burger War because she was in one of the commercials. And so they were talking about the fact that McDonald's was very aggressive about going after him and Burger King for the advertising when they said that Burger King had better non-frozen meat or whatever that was. So happy birthday, Mr. Norman Brinker.
That's a good one, Tim. I think that's got to be filed away for future use, if you know what I mean. I like that one.
Yeah. No, he was a good one. And,
Smart business.
And it was funny because there were a lot of them today. There was actually a lot of business birthdays today, but a lot of ones we've covered over the last 13 years. So this was one we had not. So I was glad to hear it. So, hey, many of you know that one of our partners here in the focus group is Deep Discount.
Sharky the Shark.
Hey, by the way, I've got a little special gift for you when I see you next time. related to Sharky the Shark.
Excellent.
But if you go to focusgroupradio.com, you can click on the deep discount logo and own your passion, start shopping away. We believe they have the best prices, hands down, of anybody in terms of finding stuff and searching around and finding things that are hard to get or hard to find with TV, movie, DVDs, and a bunch of other media, particularly music too. They do have a big music selection. Right now, they've got the summer-wide sale going on. Mr. Nash, did you find something you like?
I have found a whole list of what I consider to be June titles. But it was sort of sidecard when we got our list of movies that are coming out, new releases from Lauren over at Deep Discount, because not only was the new release one that I would love to own, but there's also another new release that I decided to profile as my choice because I actually enjoyed this. So fans of Star Trek will know that CBS All Access is running Star Trek Discovery, and they also ran Picard on their subscription network. And in between these shows, they created something called Star Trek Short Treks. And they were anywhere from 3 to 8 minute long mini movies or mini episodes that featured a lot of the cast from Star Trek Discovery. Some were animated. I enjoyed, I would say, every single one. There was only one that I thought, that's not so cool on that one. But they're really well done. They're fun, and they've collected them on a Blu-ray, and they've done this along with audio commentary, featurettes, and some interviews. So this is one of those things where you could digest this really great. You could get into it. You could watch the shorts. You could learn about how they made them, how the writing happened, and some of the special effects.
Did they use existing footage, or did they have to create stuff as well?
Great question. These are all shot as if they were brand new. So same actors, same sets, but they actually shot them as if they were mini episodes. So that just came out, and it's Star Trek Short Treks on Blu-ray, and it's at Deep Discount. And check it out if you haven't. It's very useful because they only run these on CBS All Access. And if you don't have a subscription and you're doing what I do, which is wait till the season finishes, then I'll buy the Blu-ray or the DVD. It's really great to have them in one place.
Now, John, I'm going to ask you a question. Mm-hmm. If someone said to you, one of the franchises is going to be gone forever and you can never see it again, it's going to disappear, and you had to pick between Star Trek and Star Wars, what would you do?
Wow. This is a macabre and nasty question. It's like putting a knife in my back, but I'll tell you this.
That's like asking which kid do you like? Which kid do you want to keep? You had two kids. You're only allowed
which
to keep
is your
one.
Favorite? You know what? I grew up with Star Trek. I'd have to say that would be the one I'd keep. Yeah, I love them both to death, but I remember watching my very first episode of Star Trek in the rec room. Remember rec rooms? So people would convert their basements. So I had a friend named Philip Blaine, and he had two brothers, I'm sorry, and they had this really cool rec room in their basement. They had a pool table. They had air hockey. Remember air hockey?
Right.
Thing would slide around. And they had a tea. And one time I'm over there playing air hockey with Philip, and his older brother said, "Hey guys, come here. John and Philip, come over here. We want to show you a show that we love." And it was Star Trek. And the first show I ever saw was called The Ultimate Computer. I think I might have been 10 or 11.
Didn't Star Trek come out in, was it 1967?
Before we landed on the moon. So it was, 66, 67. And
so you didn't watch it because you were only four or five then. So you didn't watch it.
Yeah, so by the time I saw it, it was already in reruns on WPIX, which we used to get in Connecticut, which was a New York station, Pix 11. You remember when you did the antenna? Yep. You'd get that. So I'd have to say I would, nasty question, funny one, but I'd have to stick with Star Trek.
And it's funny because I think I would have said that too, because I know that you've had a very full life with Star Trek.
Well said. You know more than most people do about me. So
I'll leave it at that. So I picked something that I've talked about before, but it's now out in Blu-ray, which I would love to see it in Blu-ray. It came out in April of 2020. It's 16 Candles, which I'm not sure could be made now. It was originally was released in 1984. It's only 93 minutes long, which I think is the length that movies should be. And it's distributed by the Arrow Video. But on Blu-ray, it's you can get it for $23.01. You'll save over 42%. And You know, it was one of those John Hughes films which cemented him as kind of the king of the teen cinema and introduced us to Molly Ringwald. Who didn't have a crush on Molly Ringwald? I don't know. Did you have a crush on Molly Ringwald, John?
Well,
I think everyone did, didn't they?
I thought she was hysterical in this movie, and I agree with you. I am not quite sure, given some of the dialogue, that they would do it quite the same way. But what a fun movie, right? And this,
none of it could be done, John. A big chunk of it couldn't be done.
Yeah,
it was so politically incorrect, and then it has lots of the crude, kind of the rude and crude humor of the teen sex comedies of then. But I was laughing because it says here, and so it's about Molly Ringwald's family forgets it's her birthday, and she's in love with this other guy, and there's a house party, which makes me laugh because you and I used to go to house parties a lot in high school. And I remember, I think one time, didn't you crash your dad's car and you just drove it home and left it to pretend it didn't happen?
No, I took a corner. It was a big Impala.
Right.
Remember the Impala? Big of a boat. Stacy Cassane was in the car with me, and I think Marianne was in the back seat. Turn here, turn here, turn here. I just listened. I turned, I hit a rock, and it crushed the front fender, and I went home. Magically, at 1 a.m, my parents were up having an Entenmann's coffee cake. I don't know why. I come in. I said something about the car being damaged. We immediately went out with a flashlight, and my dad insisted that I go talk to the shop class because the shop class at the high school was going to fix the car.
Well, that's pretty funny.
Yeah, I know. My mother just rolled her eyes like the shop class is not fixing this car. And then the car went away a little while later. But yeah, this is a great pick for you, by the way. This is one of your favorites. In fact, if they had a Blu-ray pack of all the John Hughes films, that would be in your collection. Yeah.
Well, and it was just a lot of fun, and it's really a slice of 80s pop culture. And they say the movie today continues to be. This was in the critics' review, said it continues to be debated and beloved over 3 decades later. I don't know what was debated about it.
A lot of things about that movie. It reminds me of our friends Will and Lori when they watch Animal House with their daughter, and they're laughing about something, and the daughter's like, "What are you laughing at?" They're like, "It's funny," and she's like, "No, it's not."
Yeah. Well, that's another one. Yeah, I'll believe it at that. What's the new release this week?
To kick off the new release, Garrett, I gave you an audio snippet to play.
One sec.
It's from this movie. And in fact, Tim, this takes us back to the days of Pick That Flick.
I was going to say, is it a Pick That Flick?
It was a clue from Pick That Flick, but it involves the actor. I love this actor. And so do you have that, Garrett?
You got to make up your minds. You want to stay alive and ante up? You want to play it cheap? Be on welfare the whole winter.
I think that's Robert Shaw.
I know what the release is, but I don't think I would get it off of that clip.
The Jaws 45th anniversary limited edition on 4K and Ultra HD. This is the one, folks. This is the one that started the summer blockbuster Steven Spielberg adaptation of Peter Benchley's masterpiece. And that was, I think it was Robert Shaw in there that said that. He plays the grizzly guy who's going to go out and get the shark for sure. But, what great casting, right? Richard Dreyfuss, Roy Scheider. I remember seeing this movie, and the scene that will never leave my head about this is they're underwater. I think Richard Dreyfuss is underwater, and there's some hole in a boat, and eventually, like, a head falls out of the cut in the thing. And I just remember being so scared. I was like, what? So this is one of the classics. It's a 2-disc set. Storyboards, outtakes, deleted scenes, photo gallery, theatrical trailer. In other words, they gave it the 45th anniversary edition that it deserves. So I would head on over to Deep Discount and check that out. So get to Deep Discount by going to focusgroupradio.com. Click on the shark logo, Sharky the Shark, and start your shopping. I picked a new release, Star Trek Short Treks. If you know the show Discovery on CBS All Access, then you'll know that these came out in between the seasons, and they're really cool. Tim picked 16 Candles, a John Hughes classic, and the release this week is the 45th anniversary limited edition of Jaws, a must-have. What do we say, Garrett?
Thanks, Deep Discount.
We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we have a phone call and a shop talk, so stay with us.
You're listening to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com. Focus on the savvy side of 9 to 5 with the Focus Group.
Try, really try.
Listen, laugh, and learn with Tim and John.
I never try anything. I just do it.
Hey, welcome back to the Focus Group. Tim Bennett here, as always, with my good friend and co-host, Mr. John T. Nash. Be sure to join us every Wednesday live at 1 p.m. East. Also, be sure to catch our podcast, which is TFG Unbuttoned, every Tuesday morning. You can find out more about us and all our programming at focusgroupradio.com. Before we do our shop talk, Mr. Nash, you said we had a call?
We've got Don from Alabama on the line, which I always love talking to Don. Don, welcome to the show.
Hi, guys. Just going to give you the famous milestones in space history for today, because today, June 3rd, is the anniversary of Ed White being the first American to walk in space on June 3rd, 1965.
Don, was that the Mercury or the Apollo program?
It was Gemini.
It was Gemini. So it was Gemini, yes. Mercury, then Apollo, I think?
Mercury, Gemini, Apollo.
Gemini, Apollo. Okay.
Yep. And he spent 23 minutes in space and had to be ordered back into his capsule because he was so exhilarated by the experience that he didn't want to return.
You know, I'm kind of with him there.
Where is he now?
He passed away, 11 years ago, 12 years ago.
Wow. And of course, Don,
he also made it to the moon.
Yeah, that's right. And I was going to bring that up. And I was going to also say I caught the launch and the docking of the Dragon capsule. And one of my the thing I was most intrigued by was the comment by the pilots, who both, I think, or at least one of them has flown the space shuttle. You caught the thing he said at some point. He said it was a much smoother ride getting to orbit than the shuttle ever was. So I'm curious what that means, because we don't have an experience for it, but smoother means it barely was a bumpy ride, right?
Yeah. Well, the other thing is that you have to sort of understand as a matter of engineering, while the process is the same, they have both commercial enterprises have completely re-engineered the Bell engine system. So the way those rocket systems handle are much more efficient and much smoother than what NASA was using with their rocket systems and with the space shuttle. So just mechanically, it has fewer parts, it has more robust parts, and it has a much more efficient operating system. So while the process is the same, the tech they put into it, they went back and did what a commercial company did. They said, okay, here's what it does. Now let's re-engineer this so it does it better.
And they call their engines the Merlin engine, if I'm not mistaken. And it is that technology you're talking about. One of the other things I loved seeing was the camera that was capturing imagery of the bottom of the engine, at least on the first and the second stage. And the bell, the area where the stream comes out of propellant, was red. You probably saw what I saw. It was like red hot. And I'm wondering what metal was that even, right?
They're titanium.
And titanium can withstand the extreme heat and cold, right?
Yes, it's one of the very, very few metals. Now they're getting into some composite materials that are they can handle the heat and the cold stress very well, but the transition between heat and cold becomes an issue, and they become much more brittle. So at some point these will be replaced by resilient composites that will be a third to half as heavy, thus making again the ability to get further and higher and faster. Remember that the SpaceX plans to go to Mars by 2029, 2030.
Ooh. Yeah. I'm not going to be buying my ticket for that. Hey, look, they want to do it with that Starliner thing. So, Tim, you know about this. You probably saw it on the news. They had another disaster with the Starliner. It's like a big rocket, a super rocket that got damaged on testing again, right?
Yep. Yes.
Well.
But again, space history. You got to remember, it was 24 times NASA put a rocket on a launch pad before it got the first rocket to get into orbit.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I keep remembering that the Saturn V, one of the biggest machines ever built, we didn't have any failures with those, did we?
No, we never. We had failures within systems. You would have in the first stage, you've got 5 Bell rockets J1 rockets sitting on the base. You would have a rocket fail. You would have a pump fail. But any three motors functioning at 100% would satisfy the launch parameter and get the first stage up to where it needed to be. So you had certain system redundancies within it. But that at the time was the most complex machine that had ever been built by mankind. And it was a zero failure system outside of the incident with Apollo 13 with the command module having the oxygen tank rupture.
Right. But I sometimes think of that as a little different than the actual boosters that got the capsule into orbit. Yeah. All right, my friend, I want to thank you do you have any other space history for us?
No, I just wanted to, fill in with your, weekly history in space segment.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Take care, Don. I think we also have another call from Steve who wants to correct something that Don just said, which is interesting. So let's take Steve. Steve, welcome to the show.
Hey, actually, guys, it's Dan in Orlando. When I said Steve, I was talking to him in there. I didn't know it was him or Garrett.
Oh.
But believe it or not, I love hearing Don's. I mean, I know you believe I love hearing Don's calls, but he aired in one of his comments. Ed White was one of the 3 astronauts that was killed in the fire on the launch pad in the Apollo 1 test in 1967.
Oh my God! When the door, they couldn't. That's what led to all the redoing of the safety features and emergency hatch opening because they couldn't get out. That was a horrible accident.
Yeah, there was a spark of some sort. There's all kinds of films and things about it, but there was a spark that ignited, and it was he and Gus Grissom, who was our second person in space, and Roger Chaffee, that all died in that accident.
You're right. And had they not, he would have actually been one of the crews that was, I don't know if he would have actually gone to the moon because the way the Apollo missions were set up, these are all test until there was Apollo 11 for landing.
Right.
But still, he was an Apollo astronaut. Yeah. Well, thanks for correcting us and for correcting Don. Thank you.
Sorry, Don. I thought when you said that, I was like, what?
This is. Thanks for calling. This is the point of the cocktail party where I'd have excused myself, Johnny, you'd have had the fun of the night.
Yeah, I'm watching Tim
on these names.
I'm watching Tim on the split screen, and you're paying close attention, but you're also like,
I just don't know a lot of these names. I mean, I'm fascinated by the fact that people are that knowledgeable about it. And
on space program.
Don't ever say we don't have smart people watching the show, right, John?
True. All right, why don't we get into our
people out there? So we've got a quick shop talk today. It's 8 things that smart people never reveal about themselves at work, and some of them are pretty obvious. But they talked about people that have emotional intelligence, and I kind of laughed a little bit about this. But they said people that have emotional intelligence are usually the top performers at work, but they're also smart in how much they reveal about themselves at work. And they'd done a bunch of surveys. Some of these I think are obvious. Many of them I've made the mistake of doing. But what was the first one, John?
Talking about your political beliefs. And I was taught this very, very, very early on by my grandfather, actually. You don't talk about church. You don't talk about money. So and we're going to see those play out here. I think it's self-explanatory. It just tends to open up a lot of interesting fissures between people because we have slightly different perceptions of all this, and I think it's very obvious. Don't bring your don't bring your political beliefs to work, or don't
bring your political beliefs to work. And I remember a member of senior management one time at Subaru saying, "Oh, the marketing department is full of a bunch of liberals," and that pretty much squashed everything down.
There you go. Right?
Yeah, exactly right. Which it probably was. The second thing was that you think somebody is competent. So telling somebody that or
incompetent.
Incompetent. What did I say? Competent.
Competent. Yeah. You want to let people know when they're competent. You don't want to say anything when they're incompetent.
Yeah. Which I was. I think all people gossip though. In other words, if you were working with somebody and they just couldn't get their work done or they're doing it wrong, wouldn't you say, "Oh my God, I can't believe it"? I'm guilty of that one. So I saw that one.
That one, I agree with you. I think that's the office back chatter. but not the top line. Like that might happen off the grid, but it doesn't happen in front of people.
Right.
This other one is what I said my granddad taught me years ago, and that's don't talk about how much money you make, because if you and I have seen this in environments where people learn the salaries of other people around them.
Right.
Ooh, boy, that never goes well. That never goes well, right?
Yeah, I remember learning the salaries of a bunch of people that reported to me that made, in some cases, double of myself, and I went to HR about it, and it was not a happy scene. The number 4, don't let people know that you hate your job. In other words, if you're the leader of a group or you're part of a group or a team, letting people know that you're not excited or enthusiastic about your job just puts a bad light on you. So they said, don't let people know that you hate your job. And again, I don't know anyone who hasn't ever said, "Oh my God, I hate this," but maybe that's just me.
Something, you and I, in our roles as an agency, we often hear from our clients privately about what's going on, and they might say, "I don't like this or that," but they would never reveal that to the company. But they could tell an external person that. This next one is also, in my opinion, just something you should know inherently, and you don't talk about what you do in the bedroom. Unless you have someone who's really deadly curious about your your bedroom life, your sex life. I would say it's just something to avoid, right?
Right, and that's coupled with number 6 about what you think someone else does in the bedroom. I don't know why I never walked away with a big check from my last corporate gig. I had. You know who this person is. And not only did they ask an agency person in front of all of us if they scheduled time for masturbation on the road, but also it let us all know that he couldn't wear shorts, and then went ahead to show us why he couldn't wear shorts, because he felt he was so well endowed. And of course he wasn't. But I think about that now, and how inappropriate. It's Trump, right? It's very much that sort of behavior that you just shake your head at. So yeah, don't talk about others in the bedroom, and don't speculate what you think other people are doing in the bedroom.
Yeah, and this next one is actually something I smiled when I read it, because I think you could walk away from a conversation that involved what I'm about to say, and either laugh or and it's basically, don't talk about how wild you used to be. Right? Here's what I did in my crazy old sowing my oats days or whatever. And, you never know when a story about how wild you used to be could cross a line and someone be like, wait a minute.
you were partying or binge drinking or experimenting or whatever, right? And then the last one is, and don't let anybody know that you're job hunting. And I remember I had an employee that I really loved and had no idea that I knew he was frustrated a little bit, but had no idea he was out interviewing, and ended up landing a pretty magnificent job, but did not tell me or alert me until he actually had accepted the job and then came in to hand in his resignation. But he was very smart about that, never let on that he was looking. So it says, don't let people know you're job hunting. They gave an example here of somebody saying that they were on a baseball team as a kid and said they were going to quit, and then the coach just benched him for the rest of the time, and he was,
Oh, it's a sad
useless.
story because the kid decided not to quit 2 weeks later, but was basically, dinged as being a non-team player. So he was benched for the season.
Too late.
The job hunt thing is fascinating. I had a friend who worked at a company who discovered that a close coworker, and he managed a team, and one of his best team people, he only found out about the job search because the guy made the mistake of listing him as a reference, but not telling him. So you imagine you're sitting at your desk, I want a reference for XYZ. Well, wait a minute, they're sitting that's right over there. You got to be careful of that.
Jeez. Yeah, so I thought those were pretty good. It was more, that's more of a primer, what we went through. I mean, a lot of it's obvious, like you said, about talking about money, talking about people's personal lives in their bedrooms or whatever. But politics was always the big one. Politics and religion. And that stands for everything. If you're with people you don't know, you always have to be careful about talking about politics and religion, right? Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to wrap up the show, folks. We want to thank you for joining us today, and thank you for listening to us on audio or video. And, of course, focusgroupradio.com is our website. Check us out there. You'll learn about me and Tim and where to find all our shows, including On Button, which comes out on Tuesdays. And we want to thank Deep Discount. They've been a partner of ours here since the beginning, and we can't be happier to be working with them. So it's the site-wide summer sale, one of our favorites. I picked Star Trek Short Treks, which is now out on Blu-ray. It's brand new. Tim picked 16 candles. And the release this week was the 45th anniversary edition of Jaws. Arr! And how perfect for a deep discount that a shark movie should be the release of the week. Everybody stay safe. Don't text and drive. Arrive alive. And we will see you in the new week.
It's The Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.
That was a stunning focus group.